movement prioritizes equality for all females, for women around the world. This means that women, not only in Western countries, but also in countries where, for example, in countries in Asia and, for example, Africa, we're striving to achieve equality for them and equal opportunities in the workplace or wherever. Equality is not equivalent to choice, as some people in the Western world would believe, because some people in countries that do not have the same, aren't living at the same standard as in Western countries, do not have the ability to access, say, equal opportunities in the workplace, or the sort of the choice to not be like the housewife at home. This means that the feminist movement prioritizes equality for everyone, not just more choice. Okay, first thing to know. I'll explain why this becomes relevant later. So what do we mean by the commercialization of feminism? We mean companies getting involved in feminist movement. This could be companies such as Victoria's Secret saying that they want to empower women and empower the feminist movement. Or it could be other companies that say donate to the feminist movement and their causes. It could even be celebrities that get involved, such as Taylor Swift, but don't actually donate. So no, not all commercial involvement gets more money for the feminist movement. So what this tends to result in is it tends to result in certain areas of the feminist movement getting highlighted by the companies, depending on their monetary interests. And while Alt might come up and say this is good, we tell you why this visibility in specific areas of feminism is actually net bad. Okay, why? For two reasons. First of all, it limits the scope of the feminist movement, and second of all, it's harmful to minorities or like the non-white population that do not get as much publicity as a result. Why does it limit the scope of the feminist movement? It is important that the feminist movement reaches out to a variety of different groups, right? So it is important that it reach out to not only the Western women in Western countries and encourage them to strive for equal rights, but also women in countries that have less equality, for example, Malaysia or, say, Tanzania. It is also important that they reach out to men, because it is men also that need to buy into feminism in order to sort of contribute to this narrative that supports feminism. So in their world, when you get companies such as Dove getting involved, the first priority of these companies is commercial interests. This means that these companies would only be promoting certain aspects of the feminist campaign, only the ones that are in line with the selling of their products. This would look like companies promoting equality for, say, only the skinniest, fittest women, such as in the case of Victoria's Secret, and such that they don't think of all women in the spectrum of all the women that you're trying to strive for equality for. So as a result, you do not get equal visibility for all these women. You end up highlighting equality only for a specific set of women that is harmful to everyone else. And because these companies have commercial interests first, when it comes to actually funding specific things that require lots of money, such as campaigns that will fight for certain policies, they'll be less interested, they'll be significantly more interested in just trying to get like a skinny girl going on the runway and saying that she is a woman who supports other women, although she doesn't take structural changes to ensure that. So this is the first reason why we think it's harmful. The second reason why we think that the commercialization of feminism is terrible is because it's harmful for minorities or, say, the non-white population. Right? So as I mentioned before, feminism has to access all groups of people. It has to access the people in the countries who are the more marginalized women in countries, and it has to access more people than just the typical like white population who believe in choice feminism and who think that that's the only kind of feminism that matters. When commercial companies get involved, they tend to only prioritize the Western side of feminism. Why? Because it sells better. Because you get more women in the Western world where they buy products from these companies, and these women are the ones that is going to give like financial returns to these companies, and that's why companies have more interest in promoting feminism for them as opposed to other groups. We think this is terrible because even if you get more money for these groups of people, you kind of like cast out the importance of feminism for the rest of the population. And it means that companies will ultimately be fighting for what they think is equal rights for everyone, while they'll only be prioritizing certain groups. And this is particularly bad because then there is a perception that the companies are contributing to the feminist movement, and therefore they get like good public relations for it, when actually they're only prioritizing a group of feminism, a certain type of feminism that belongs to a group of people who already are privileged and require less striving towards this goal of equality than women, say, in other countries. So, to conclude, the reason why we think the feminist movement is terrible, and commercialization of the feminist movement is terrible, is because when commercial interests get involved, that is when the ultimate goals of the feminist movement, which is to provide equality for all women, not choice feminism, gets diluted. That is when commercial interests start meaning that the people who are already privileged and are more able to access the equal rights that the movement is trying to strive for get more emphasis, whereas people that actually need to establish structural changes in the country in order to access like basic services and basic forms of equality get deprived and just cast out from the whole picture as a result. That's why we are proud to propose.
So today in my argument, what our side of the house is really going to be focusing on is the fact that commercialization can actually be a really effective tool for normalizing social movements. Right, so we can expand this broader, but we're going to look particularly in this case at how this has benefited feminism. Right, so like it's not just about the monetary benefit that commercialization has caused. It's actually had a lot broader effects on feminism and created some substantial benefits for the movement. To begin, it's an extremely effective way to spread the message of feminism, right? Like, you can't just not walk past shop windows and see the future is female shirts or a shirt saying you're a feminist, right? Like, commercialization is everywhere. We can't just, like, get stores out of our lives and get advertisements out of our life, but we can have them bring some sort of benefit. It really, commercializing feminism kind of takes advantage of a capitalistic framework, right? There are worse alternatives for advertising. So imagine like you don't use feminist advertising and instead you use sexist advertising like they used to, right? Like we all saw the pinup models and stuff. So yeah, this is a better alternative, I think, in some ways. It's better to embrace, like, even if people embrace feminism just because it's trendy, like, they're still representing feminism, even if it's not in its ideal form. And, like, them representing this trendy feminism is still doing more than them not supporting it at all, right? And like them supporting this feminism, it creates normalization and lowers barriers to identify as a feminist, right? Like when I was 12, there was a much like more stigma like saying you're a feminist than when like now that I'm 20, and I think commercialization has helped this. Because like young women see feminized advertised like everywhere, and they want to understand what it is, and like this normalization causes women to be less insecure about saying that they are a feminist because they see it everywhere and they see like other people like getting on board with it. Right? And it's also made it so feminism is not so much as a political ideology, it's a normal part of the society, right? Like stores probably wouldn't choose to advertise feminism if they didn't see it like as a normal part of our society and something that should be embraced. Right? Like, and if everyone believes we all should be feminists, we can start talking about what that feminism should actually look like. So, right, even though, like, it maybe doesn't exist in its most ideal form, like, that feminism still can be good. Right? Alright. So, it creates a community of feminists, like, women, too. Right? Seeing other women, like, with feminist gear is very empowering. Right? Like, I love, like, going to the library and seeing, like, feminist stickers. I'm like, cool, I'm a feminist, too. Like, that's really nice. And it's really empowering to know, like, you're not the only woman out there. And it becomes a lot, like I said, more accessible, because the political ideology component now is not, like, so ostracizing, because you see it everywhere. You see feminism everywhere. Without commercialization, there would also be less of a voice, like, to be feminist, right? Like, music, clothes, and things like that are all really easy ways to show that you're feminist. It's not really, like, common for probably women to go out there and be like political in their daily lives and feminist, of course, but like showing that small hand of support is better than showing nothing. Also, feminism in commercialization is a really great way to minimize the harms. Right, like to begin, it changes the way that women are used in advertisement, as I mentioned before, like no longer sexist advertisement, but feminist advertisement, right? Like it's not even just like the like real women empower other women shirts. It's also using models with diverse bodies, right? Like there's a pushback against corporations like Victoria's Secret because they don't like have a really great like body image model, and they give us these unrealistic representations of what women should look like. Like we girls, we know like out there, like when you're gonna buy underwear, you want to like buy it like from a company that has models that look how you look, right? Like that's kind of how I choose like where I buy from. And like if I can have kind of some say about whether or not the company like shows like a body that looks like mine, right? Like that's kind of, I get more choice in the like kind of consumer box I am put in. Right. So it also creates like companies now fear being a sexist company. They no longer want to be sexist because that isn't cool, and they know that they will lose consumers if they do so, right? Like companies, when like something happens with someone they endorse, or right, like Netflix took down all of Louis C. King's like films like after they found out about what happened with the Me Too movement, because they know like if they kept them out there, that would be probably really harmful to their image, and that benefits us because it's kind of pushing back against that, right? And these women who buy into feminist commercialization should, in our ideal world, hold these companies accountable, right? It's easier to call companies out now that you like know what's bad about like what they're like. You know that they're trying to articulate feminism and selling it, right? Like it's bad to sell feminism if you have a wage gap in your company. And now that feminism has been normalized, like they can push, like people can push to buy from companies that don't just sell feminism, but actually articulate it in their policies as well. And like you think that, oh, like that's not always going to work. But right, it should work because the people that are buying from them buy into feminism, so ideally they should buy into feminist policies as well. And they know like people care enough about feminism to buy out of their company if they don't embrace feminist policies. So we think that that's extremely beneficial on our side of the house. Oh my gosh, my stopwatch went off. Okay, and so now I'm going to do a little bit of rebuttal, right? I want to recognize the issues within commercialization of feminism are reflective of issues that exist in the feminist movement as a whole, right? So like, it was brought up the criticism with Taylor Swift's white feminism. Yeah, it's kind of bad, right? But like, now that we can see like, the issues in this commercialization microcosm, like we can talk about what needs to change within the modern day feminism we articulate, right? Like, and the failure to be intersectional in feminism is not just exclusive to commercialization. That's what's happening in feminism now. Like, it lacks a lot of intersectionality, right? And like this, like looking at commercialization and seeing it in our everyday life lets us know what's wrong with the feminism that is currently represented to us, right? And it creates like we now have this awareness, so we can now see what the issues of modern day feminism is. Because right, like we should in our feminism reach out to populations that extend beyond those we know, and that would be ideal. Yeah. So I also kind of brought up, right, like it's harmful for minorities in this feminism, but it's also, like I said before, it's lowering the barrier. So now that we know that feminism is more like a commonplace and we have like these products sold at lower prices too, it's kind of easier to articulate your feminism as well.
Okay, so today I'm going to continue the case for my side by talking about like the primary interest that these companies who commercialize feminism have. Before I go on to do that, I'd just like to address a couple of points brought up by Emma. Okay, so Emma told us that commercialization of feminism is good because it's helping to spread the message. We would actually argue that just because you buy a t-shirt with hashtag feminism written on it, you're not getting much of a rhetoric about what's wrong in feminism today just from buying that t-shirt. So we don't really like see where she's coming from. So we see that, yeah, like just because you see feminism written on like phone cases and bags, yes, this raises awareness that feminism is an issue. This is to promote real structural change. We think there's a fundamental disconnect between people who buy feminist like stuff like t-shirts and people who become activists. We don't think that's a straight link. We don't think that just because you buy commercialized feminist products, that means you automatically become a feminist activist who's going to actively search for structural change. We think that's a fundamental link that's missing from their argument. And we think that Emma's under a fundamental misconception when she says that people who buy like t-shirts with hashtag feminism on them then hold companies accountable when they do things like pay under minimum wage. We'd argue that while Mattel at the moment is receiving a lot of like compliments and praise for creating a Barbie who like is a surgeon, is a lawyer, and like does all these like cool things, when Mattel are underpaying and forcing their workers in Japan to work in inhumane conditions, we see that that's not like as much in the news. You see, we don't see many people speaking out against that issue. Just because they like buy into the feminist rhetoric that this company is selling doesn't mean that they then challenge the company on their anti-feminist policies. We also heard about this conversation, which this is like happening. We've heard that the conversation about feminism is like increasing because we see all this like feminized merchandise around. We'd actually argue that this conversation that they're talking about isn't happening. We'd say that Taylor Swift is still the poster child for feminism in Hollywood, despite actively talking not nice about other women in the sphere and never actually monetarily contributing to any kind of feminist organization or movement. We think that that conversation just isn't happening, and the commercialization of feminism isn't raising any kind of awareness about what actually being a feminist means. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to talk about the primary interests behind the companies who commercialize feminism. Okay, so what are the motives behind companies who put a feminist rhetoric into advertising campaigns? We'd argue that their main motive is not to promote the feminist movement, but simply just to sell stuff. Okay, so we believe that this is true because we live in a capitalist society, and these companies are just simply trying to make money. It's how they survive. They see that hashtags like Me Too are rising in popularity, and people are coming to see feminism come to more the surface of society, and they're simply jumping on the bandwagon and putting it on things just to make money because they see that it's trending on things like Twitter. And we think this is extremely damaging. Okay, so we think that this is damaging because this then results in a weak or confused message. So we see that when feminism isn't the top priority in a feminist marketing campaign, then we don't see any real issues being tackled. We see that when we look at the example of a feminist marketing campaign, we see that no serious issues are tackled, but we think the typical issues tackled are fluffy issues which are hard to argue with, that everyone should love each other and that everyone you should love yourself. We feel that's a very easy message to get behind. And we feel like that's why these companies are promoting these messages, because they're not controversial and they don't deal with the true things that feminism is trying to get done. It's a distorted view of what feminism is really asking for. Because yes, feminism is asking for we think that feminists think that women should all be empowered and love each other and love themselves. We feel like that's not the structural change that feminism is really arguing for today. Sometimes we just get a genuinely sexist message from companies who aren't focused on the feminist aspect of their marketing campaign. We think that when Dove tells you that you can love yourself and be an empowered woman, but only if you have shiny, shiny hair, then this is fundamentally a bad message which you should be sending. We feel that when CoverGirl creates a campaign and uses celebrities like Ellen DeGeneres to say that you can be a working woman, you can be a girl who plays football, but only if your makeup stays on for 16 hours a day, then this is fundamentally just not a good message and not a message the feminist movement wants to get behind. We think that companies also don't back up their words with activism. So we feel like it's still fundamentally a disconnected society when we have companies saying, yeah, we're feminists, yeah, we agree with all of these things, when they still force their workers to work in inhumane conditions. You will see all these t-shirts with hashtag feminism written on them, and then you'll see a tiny, tiny tag that says made in Sri Lanka. What you won't see is that these Sri Lankan women aren't paid the minimum wage. Gender equality isn't enforced for these women, and these are women who feminism really needs to help. But unfortunately, they're not being looked at, just overlooked in society. So we see that these companies are just jumping on the feminism bandwagon while still purporting an anti-feminist rhetoric in their business policies. And we see this is fundamentally harmful. So I'm going to go on to talk a little bit about the impacts of this. So you see that a problem with the commercialization of feminism is that people then equate buying a t-shirt with becoming a feminist activist. Feminism has been built on radical, structural, institutional change. You don't get change just because you see the word feminism written everywhere. We see there's a fundamental disconnect here, and that just simply isn't true. We feel like this creates an apathetic society where people, because they see feminism around everywhere, written on phone cases and t-shirts, they think that actual change is being carried out, when in fact this isn't true. So we see that we create an apathetic society because people think they are contributing to the feminist movement by buying t-shirts which have pro-feminist messages on them. When in actual fact they aren't creating any fundamental institutional change, which is what the feminist movement is searching for and trying to achieve. Okay, so we think that this becomes bad then because there's less motivation to push for real change, because people think they're pushing for real change by buying feminist t-shirts sold by companies who purport an anti-feminist rhetoric in their actual policies. So I feel like this is just really, really bad. And we also think a side impact of this is that because companies see that it's popular to put hashtag feminism on a t-shirt, they think they can charge more for these kind of t-shirts. And this necessarily excludes women who are less financially advantageous. When companies take a £5 t-shirt, slap feminism on it, and then charge 40 quid for it, you're automatically alienating sections of society, which is fundamentally anti-feminist, since feminism is meant to tackle equality across all sections of society. We'd also like to add that it's not like just as companies who have motives not related to feminism to promote feminism, so do celebrities. So we see like Taylor Swift is like creating her own brand by claiming she's like this feminist girl power like squad kind of girl, when in actual fact she bashes any girl who's like dated one of her ex-boyfriends unmercilessly in the press. We feel like this is like really damaging because it's teaching young girls that you can call yourself a feminist without enacting any feminism in your everyday life. That's for all the reasons I've told you today.
Talk to the camera.
Okay, so I'm going to be continuing the side for opposition. I think it's important to point out that we don't see the commercialization of feminism as the end-all for all feminism. We don't see the goal of it as being people wearing t-shirts. What we do see it as a way to provide a stepping stone and a way to normalise feminism so that people can get behind it, which we think is something that's fundamentally missing from Proposition's case. So we don't see the goal of buying feminist products as becoming activists. We don't believe that everyone puts on a t-shirt and then immediately thinks, okay, I'm a feminist activist now. We think that's completely unrealistic. What we do think it does is creates a conversation around it and normalizes it in society, as Emma told you. I think that if you're seeing people wearing a feminist t-shirt, you're much more likely to be interested in what that movement is actually about. So if you see someone having a sticker on their laptop in the library, you're much more likely to think, okay, what is that movement actually about? What is that sticker actually telling me? Why should I care about what is on that sticker? So we think it creates a conversation surrounding this. We've also heard their point saying that people don't fight back against these companies that have these unfeminist ideals because of the things about the wage gap and things. We think that in reality, if people know about these issues, then they do speak out about it. If people know about these feminist issues within these companies, they do stand up and hold these to account. We can see this in other movements as well. For example, in the Me Too movement, when something came out about sexual abuse, you could see companies' sales dropping because this happened. Like we can see that with like Philip Green, things like that, where things came out and people reacted to it in the public. So I think by commercializing this, we allow people to be able to see these issues that might not have been relevant in the first place. Because we think that on either side of the house, that these issues are going to exist, but at least on our side, people have the chance to actually be aware of it and have the chance to stand up, whereas it would have gone under the radar on their side of the house. So we want to talk about what would have happened without the commercialization of feminism. Because we've heard a lot that it kind of blocks out these groups of people. But we think that without the commercialization, they were blocked out a lot more than they already were. Because in reality, if these people, there are groups of people who simply don't have the money to participate in feminism in the way that it was originally. We don't think that it's very realistic where you've got these £40 t-shirts for sale saying I am a feminist. Because we think those do exist, but on the other hand, you can buy like CDs that promote feminism, or you can buy really cheap t-shirts. We don't think that this is the majority of products. Like you can get smaller products that show what your feminist ideals are. And we think that before that, your options for expressing feminism were basically going to rallies, which, depending on where you lived, would be extremely expensive to travel to. Or it would be like writing to your politicians or something and demanding change that way. And we think that two situations arise from that. We think that from that, it's either going to be like the really rich, kind of privileged white women who get the chance to write to their governments and actually have the money and the power to actually get their opinions heard. Or it's going to be the really radical feminists who go to them and campaign about this, but then they don't get heard and they get dismissed out of hand. In both situations, the feminist movement is hurt. Because in the first one, even if they do get change from kind of having that money and that position of privilege, the people that they really need to get help for, like the minority women or people from poorer backgrounds don't get a voice heard, and it's seen as that is the only type of feminism. In the other case, you get radical feminists coming forward, and because they don't have the movement behind them, because it hasn't been normalized by the commercialization of people wearing t-shirts and people speaking out on Twitter and Facebook about their favourite music, because that normalization hasn't happened, they get dismissed out of hand, and that becomes the feminist movement. It becomes this thing that could have been something, but because it was too radical and too niche, it didn't actually take off. By normalizing feminism and taking it away from just politics as it was before, we allow people to come into it who dismissed it out of hand because it was just seen as being politics. If it's brought into the sphere of being culturally relevant, of having things to do with music and TV and movies and clothes that you wear and stickers that you put on your laptop, as soon as it becomes something normal, which people can all participate in, and not just something political that happens around London, Westminster, or in Washington. We open these things up to people from different backgrounds. This allows more conversations to be had. We've heard from Emma as well. If it's a political movement, the younger generation are much less likely to get involved in the first place. Because although we're all at university now and we can say that's a political movement that I'm interested in, how likely are you to be a 12-year-old girl sitting in your bedroom thinking, okay, I want to get involved in that political movement? You're much more likely to be listening to your favourite music and be interested in what they're saying, or see someone wearing a t-shirt and think, oh, I want to know what it's about. So it creates a wider audience, both in disadvantaged backgrounds and in children, making it more likely for them to come up and then demand change from companies and from the government to empower more women in the future. So basically what we've told you today is that without the commercialization of feminism, the normalization of the movement wouldn't have happened. There would still be a stigma surrounding being a feminist, and it would still only be viewed as a political movement, which is harmful on all fronts. And we think that even if these companies are just in it for the profit, we don't think they are portraying the same sort of message that Proposition is trying to tell us. We think that they are actually working on breaking down barriers because they're being called out on it. I'll repeat the point that Emma said again, with Victoria's Secret using, and other people being pressured into using more body-positive models. I feel like that is something that wouldn't have happened if the commercialization hadn't happened in the first place and people hadn't been given this voice to speak out. So for all those reasons,
I'm just basically going to sum up the main points that were brought up in our side of the house and our main responses to what OP gives you and what we think the right side of the debate is about. Spoilers, our side is the best. Okay, so what is our case, right? So our case is we're telling you that the reason why the commercialization of feminism is particularly bad is because it not only harms the inclusivity of the movement as a whole, but it just alters the message of the movement. And that is terrible because you do not get to achieve the same kind of feminist ideals that you're striving for. Up brings you 3 main points, right? First of all, they say that you get more money and this gives you more visibility, and visibility of some form of feminism is better than visibility of no feminism. We tell you that first, no, this is not true, because these aspects of feminism, the aspects that get highlighted is not equal across the spectrum. Not all aspects get equal publicity. This means that since there'll be more feminism that gets publicity, say in Western countries, the movement would appear to be fighting for, say, equal percentage of women in managerial roles, whereas in countries where women can't enter the workforce in the first place, what they should be fighting for is the right for women to enter the workforce. So the emphasis will be on a kind of feminism that already assumes that people have the ability to access these initial barriers to entry, such as the ability to work in the first place. So we think this kind of visibility is not good. And why? Because we think that if you try and put more emphasis on this unrepresentative form of feminism, you do take away from the other forms of feminism in the rhetoric. It's not like you can get both at the same time, because emphasizing one does take away sort of like the media attention of the rest. So we think that because these companies are wide-reaching, because some of these companies can be transnational companies that that operate in different countries, if they choose to propagate a message that fundamentally only benefits the West, you are unable to achieve these other forms of feminism in countries where these forms are needed the most. So even if, in terms of intentions, companies do try to sort of get attention for feminism across the spectrum of needs, we think that they are still not good conduits for change for two reasons. First of all, they focus on the more fluffy, easy to change messages that are more easy to stand behind because they don't want to get the backlash that they just don't want to get backlash. But the second thing is that these companies, while they try and push for these messages, they carry out activities that go against the very ideals of feminism. They give women unequal pay, for example, or they give them unequal working conditions and terrible working conditions in some of the countries that they manufacture their products in. So we think this is why that argument from opposition falls. The second thing the opposition tells you is that when you commercialize, you end up destigmatizing feminism, you normalize it, and this is good. We tell you, first of all, that they haven't proven that just by slapping a logo on a shirt, you get the kind of dialogue and you get the kind of change you talk about. Because people don't engage with the messages that they necessarily see on like other people's shirts. If someone had like a racial slur on their t-shirt, I'm pretty sure you're not going to buy into that racism and like consider yourself like a racist because of what something says on a t-shirt, you know? So they don't prove that you get to engage with this rhetoric just because you have commercialization of feminism. And even if that is the case, there's nothing to say that the feminist movement can't use the same strategies. It is not the sort of change that they're trying to get, the sort of publicity and the ways they try and achieve it, like on t-shirts and stuff. It's not exclusive to companies because the feminist movement can equally participate in these forms of trying to get the word out. They can use social media, like we explained about the Me Too movement. That's something that's not specifically tied to commercial interests, and that is a way that you can get more popularity for the movement. So we'd rather get this kind of, even if this visibility is slightly lower, we'd rather get this visibility from the group that prioritizes and a more inclusive form of feminism than from like commercial interests that focus specifically on like specific types of feminism. The third thing that opposition brings us is that companies are encouraged to become less sexist because now you have something to hold yourself to. First of all, as we brought up in our replies to the questions, these companies can still get scrutiny for their actions even if they do not claim to be feminist. People are still able to sort of criticize the things they do, and they will tend to do so if this information like surfaces. But the second thing that's actively harmful about companies claiming to be feminists is that if they claim to be feminists, they can use it as like a token to say that, oh, we're already taking attempts to achieve equality for women, and at the same time they can carry out sort of activities that go against these ideals. In the dark, while it becomes harder, and while these activities are harder to prove, they can always say that they're already taking movements towards feminism, so therefore people get like less scrutiny. So what is our case? What do we bring you simply? First of all, companies aim to make money. This means that they'll only tie like the equality, they only talk about women, for example, in the context of like lingerie in Victoria's Secret, or in the context of hair and makeup, which propagates the kind of narratives that are actually against the feminist movement, because it's saying that women need to look pretty to become acceptable, and that they're not enough on their own, and this is not the kind of equality we're trying to achieve. But also it targets specific groups of women who are like to use these products in the meantime, and so it alienates people like men. Like the fact that there are only 4 men in this room attending this debate shows that men don't engage with the feminist narrative enough. So we basically tell you, companies have the wrong interest, they harm inclusivity, and because of this tokenism or like false perception of change, it isn't a good outcome that we achieve for feminism. That's why we are proud to propose.
Okay, so, right. We don't want to claim that the commercialization of feminism is perfect. We're not saying, putting our hands up and saying it's the best thing that has ever happened, but what we are saying is that it had made a positive change to feminism that wouldn't have happened if the commercialization hadn't took place in the first place. So what you're hearing from us is that it is by commercialization, sorry, start that again, by putting feminism in a commercialization kind of structure, it's taken away stigma from issues that already existed. Like we've heard it from both of us. If it wasn't for this normalization that has occurred in feminism, it is likely that people would still be afraid to say that they're feminist because they couldn't actually relate to the movement. If anything, it's provided people with something that says it to them, this is normal, this is something that we should be supporting. It's provided us with something that shows us that everyone can relate to it. So that leads me on to the first point that we've heard from Proposition. We've heard that it doesn't actually benefit people from disadvantaged backgrounds. We feel that these issues wouldn't be able to actually be addressed if there wasn't any public backing for it. So if it was still a purely political movement, which was only about these people that did have the money and things to buy into it, then we feel like these issues wouldn't be addressed in the first place. We feel that the commercialization of feminism has made it more, people from all backgrounds, more able to buy into feminism, so because they can actually access things that they can relate to. Like we've told you, they can access media, they can access like t-shirts and things like that. We think that with this, it gives them the springboard to now attack these issues that still exist in society. And if that stigma was still there, those issues wouldn't be getting any attention at all. We're getting some conversation now when we would have had none, okay? So, and we feel like it's much easier to stand behind these big issues when you're able to be given this springboard from the more fluffy issues. We think that by starting with these fluffy issues as we hear, we think that they are still important. We think that they are important to the feminist movement. They're important as something that people can go on from to then attack the bigger issues. Because we think realistically, no one's really going to go from thinking that feminism is something that they can't get behind to then thinking that they're going to tackle these big issues. We think there needs to be something in between, and the commercialization of feminism makes it much easier to actually get behind these issues. So, and we've also heard as well that it doesn't hold these companies to account because they have this thing hidden behind, to hide behind, and they consider that they are feminists. I think that this makes it even worse. I think if it comes out that a company has anti-feminist ideals behind them, but still sells feminist products, we think that makes it even more of an outrage for it, and people will actually recognise that. I think that in general, we need to have a better awareness of the issues in these companies. But once that awareness is achieved, we think that if they are a feminist company and they've been selling feminist products, and then it comes out that they have a wage gap or something, they're much more likely to get attacked a lot more because of that issue, because they've been showing themselves to be one thing when they're actually something else. And we think that's going to end up being much more detrimental to them in the end, because they're going to be forced to change, because in the end they know that they're going to lose a lot of the market that they've already built up from selling these feminist products. So basically what you hear from us today is that the commercialization of feminism has led to more people getting behind the movement because it's become normalized in society. And we think that if you are seeing these things in society, it does start some sort of conversation. So you are going to be able to engage with it more and understand it more. So this means that more people can be involved, which they wouldn't have been if it was purely a political sort of issue that people were watching from afar. It's given people the ability from different backgrounds and different places to relate to one thing and get behind it, which in the future makes it much easier for them to get behind the big issues now. So when more companies start dealing with things that, like people not having sanitary products in Africa, like things like that, when more companies jump on top of that, we think that it means that it's much more likely that people are going to get behind that and think that is something they can get involved with and support. Very proud.